So it's very, very nice to share with you these wonderful teachings of our great guru. You know, the talk tonight, How to Stand Unshaken Amidst Life's Difficulties, is based upon a statement of Paramahansa Yoganandaji. Now, we will often refer to him this evening as Master. That's how his close disciples called him. So Master said a yogi should be able to stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And so if a yogi can stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds, many of us are trying to become yogis or are yogis, and we should at least be able to stand unshaken amidst the crash of a few tests, a few difficulties and challenges in our life. So the first question is, why do we have challenges? You know, for a person who has no purpose to their life, there's no purpose to their challenges. It's just something whimsical. The Greeks used to have the thought form and the image that one of the gods, Zeus, was up in heaven, and for his amusement, he would throw down lightning bolts at these poor mortals that were running around. And the poor mortals got their challenges, or they got evaporated by the lightning bolt, whatever. So if we think that our tests, that our purpose in life, there's no clear purpose, then there's no reason to have a test except for the whimsy of the universe around us. But one of the great things about India, and both our teacher, our guru, Swami Kriyananda, and Yoganandaji said that India is the guru of the world because of the ancient teachings, the ancient understanding of the purpose of life, and not only what the purpose of life is, but how to achieve that purpose of life. Basically, Swami Kriyananda said that the whole of Sanatana Dharma, the ancient religion, the only religion, he called it, in all the universe, the basis of Sanatana Dharma is that the whole of creation comes from God, and the whole of creation will return to God. And so that movement out from God's consciousness and then back into God's consciousness is the fabric upon which this universe exists, upon which our life exists. And so there's that movement out and the movement in, but that too is not whimsical. At some point, we begin to ask, if this is the purpose of life, then how do I achieve that purpose? And in fact, Yoganandaji said that we have to go through many, many thousands and thousands of lifetimes, because he said his first book was The Science of Religion. He wrote this in part because when he began speaking in the West, but the book was written even before he went to America. But obviously, in this age, one of the primary paradigms of how we find out the purpose of anything is through scientific experimentation. So, many centuries ago, faith was the way that we found out about the reality of the universe. If somebody who was our elder or higher in the hierarchy told us this is the way things are, then we accepted this is the way things are, and we did not question beyond that. But there's a change of ages from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga, and in that change of ages, one of the things that came about is the change from accepting, simply believing because somebody told us that, to scientific inquiry. And Galileo was made a heretic because he challenged that system. The church said that the universe was around us, the earth was the center of the entire universe, and the sun went around the earth. And Galileo began to work with mathematics and higher mathematics, and he began to say, no, from my figures, from my experimentation, from my observation, the sun does not go around the earth. The earth goes around the sun. Well, this was heresy, and he was declared a heretic until he recanted. Now, it's taken nearly 400 years for him to be absolved of his heresy. A little crazy, isn't it? Nonetheless, the point here is that during this age that we're living in, belief systems have been exchanged for experiment and for looking at trying something, having a hypothesis, experimenting, testing that hypothesis, and seeing whether those results work or not. And so, in our age, religion has to become in line with that same paradigm. We can't go just on belief. We can't go with the modern mind will not accept something simply because somebody said that. Be that Krishna or Jesus or any other authority simply because they said it. Most people today will not simply accept that unless we can show that it works. And so Yoganandaji said, let me then show that spirituality, that religion works. Let me show that it is in tune with scientific revolution. And so his first book was The Science of Religion. And in that book, the primary premise was that everyone in the world is motivated by the same basic urge. Now I'll pause a minute and see if you can think, what is the basic urge that is common to everyone in this world? What motivates them to do what they do? Yogananda said, it is the desire to be happy and avoid pain. And so whatever else we choose to do, we might think, well, the primary motivation is to stay alive. Why do we want to stay alive if it doesn't make us happy? Maybe the motivation is to get rich. Why do we want to get rich? Because we think that it will make us happy. And so over incarnations, we try this and this and that until we find that no matter where we go, even when we achieve the goal that maybe has taken us a long, long time with great effort, even when we achieve that goal, if that goal is outside of ourself, it does not make us happy for longer than scientists say about 6 months. No matter what, you can win the lottery, win tens of crores, millions of crores, and still that won't make you happy for longer than about 6 months, because we try this, we try that. Anything outside of ourselves ends up, we get tired of it, and we get disappointed in it. And so Yoganandaji said that after a period of time, this trying, achieving, not being happy, not being fulfilled, begins, and I love this phrase, begins to take on a sense of anguishing monotony. Isn't that a wonderful phrase? Anguishing monotony. And so when we're tired of chasing things outside of ourselves, thinking that they're going to make us happy, then obviously the solution is, then we'd better look within ourselves. And that's how India became the guru of the world, because the ancient sages understood that they had to look within themselves for that happiness, not outside of themselves. And so when we have challenges, the challenges, if this is true, if this hypothesis is true, then challenges in our life take on a purpose, because they're meant to drive us to begin to look inside of ourselves rather than outside of ourselves. Master said that this life is meant for our education and entertainment. And then Riley, he said, but how few are either educated or entertained. So most of us, when we go through challenges, we are not entertained by those challenges. But some people are. Those who don't have great attachments to the challenge, they're rather entertained. I know this to be true, we had early on in the history of our community and on the community in Northern California, we had been there for about 6 years, and we had built our homes, and we had built businesses, and we had schools, and we had a very, very beautiful life. And then a huge forest fire came, and that forest fire burned down every house in the entire community, including our house. And so we had a baby that at that time was 11 days old. And so losing your house when you have an 11-day-old baby, and we didn't just lose our house, we lost our house and everything in it. When that happens, I would say that that qualifies as one of life's challenges. But the reaction that we had to that was more to see it as a kind of a bizarre entertainment. It wasn't necessarily what we would have first chosen, but our house in particular had a lot of leaks in the roof. And so after trying to stop the fire from burning it down, realizing I couldn't save the house, it was burnt down, and I came down out of the smoky hills and all of the chaos of a huge forest fire, and there was Devi ji standing with our little baby, and I didn't want her to be sad. So the first thing I said to her was, guess what? We don't have to worry about leaks anymore. Now, to have the non-attachment in the circumstances of that, to be able to make light of it. Of course I knew that we were facing a challenge. I knew that we were having to have some difficulty. But looking back, that event was one of the very best things of our entire life, because the challenges that you face are meant for your education, and if you can be a little bit detached, for your entertainment. And if you look back, why do people talk? Yoganandaji said he was once talking with this woman, and she was talking about, I had this gallbladder operation, and there was so much pain, and I had so much difficulty recovering from it, and it was so traumatic, and on with all the terrible things. And he said, when did you have this operation? She said, 20 years ago. So some of us are not very entertained or very educated by the challenges that we have. But if we can have just a little bit of detachment, then indeed we will see that whatever comes to us in order to make us stronger, in order to make us better. And we can either to have challenges make us better or make us bitter. And if we have them make us better, then we are educated. And those educations sometimes seem to be a little bit odd, because sometimes the test is not pleasant, and it's made in order to allow us to become more detached from our desires, from our compulsions, from the things that are holding us back. You know, it's said that everyone in the world has a God-sized hole in their heart. I like that image, a God-sized hole in their heart. And most people, if they think of God at all, they pray to Him in order to give them like a jigsaw puzzle piece that fits that God-sized hole. And for one person, that might be, oh, please give me a son. Let a son be born. For another, give me wealth. For another, give me fame. So we pray to God in order to get that jigsaw puzzle-based plug that will plug up that God-sized hole. But in fact, the heart is always changing. The heart here is the Anahat chakra, the center of our likes and dislikes. And so our likes and dislikes are constantly changing. So the little piece that we got before won't plug up the next shape of the hole. And so it's a fruitless way of approaching life. So if we can't plug up that hole, how do we get rid of the hole in our heart? Now this is an odd solution, but it is the real solution. We take away every piece of our heart that is not that hole, not the God-sized hole, God-shaped hole in our heart. We take away desires, we take away attachments, we take away pain of past memories, we take away negative thoughts, we let go of all of those, and all that remains is the God-shaped hole. And then the heart becomes whole, and when the heart becomes whole, then people say that man is holy, or that woman is holy, because all that's left is the desire for God. And so life's challenges are meant for one purpose, and that purpose is to make us whole in the sense of reuniting our consciousness with what our origins are. We're all extensions of God, we all come from God. The purpose of life, the purpose of the existence of the universe is to merge back. And so when we begin that trek, or that eternal quest, as Master called it, to merge back into God, then we find indeed, not only does life have a purpose, but that purpose becomes very beautiful and very entertaining and very joyful. You don't see many sad yogis. In fact, there was a great Christian saint who said, a sad saint is a sad saint indeed, meaning not a very good saint. And so you see among the yogis a sense of joy. Most yogis, if they join the Swami order, many of them have a name, first part of a name, say yoga, and then Ananda, Kriya Ananda, Mokshananda. Always that last part is joy or bliss. And that's what we're truly seeking. And so that God-shaped hole is not something outside, it is our own bliss. And so the tests that come to us are meant with that purpose in order to help move us. One could say herd. There's this phrase in the West, herding cats, which is kind of an impossible thing to do, moving us ever closer, ever more toward filling life's purpose. And so, how do we work with the tests that come? The first thing is not to run away from them. Most people think, at least at the beginning, that the best way to deal with a test is to make it go away. Why does this have to happen to me? I don't deserve this. I'm going to see if I can get out of this predicament that I'm in. So most of us think that the solution to a test is to make it go away. But since this is a school meant for our education, we can't escape the tests. Now, who gives us that test? We think that life is unfair, life does this to us, people do that to us, a boss is mean to us, something happens and it's not right. Who gives us those tests? You give yourself those tests. You draw them to you, your soul, not your ego. The difference, Yoganandaji said, is the ego is the soul identified with this body, and this one personality. But when we have many, 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 many personalities and bodies, the soul inhabits each one of those. And so the soul, wanting to merge back into God, draws to this particular ego, this particular body and personality, exactly, exquisitely, those tests that are meant to move us toward the ultimate purpose of life, which is to merge back into God. And so when you receive a test, don't push it away. If you can, rise to the level of consciousness that is grateful for that test. If you have a serious illness and you find a diagnosis that tells you perhaps that you've had cancer, don't push that diagnosis away. Don't deny. Don't say this is unfair. Don't say anything except, God, I know that you're giving me this in order for me to learn something. Let me be grateful for the test itself and help me understand what it is, what's missing in my consciousness that I have to develop that has drawn this test to me. Because your soul, in cooperation, you might say, with the grace of God, draws to you every challenge that you will face. And so the first thing is don't push it away, be grateful for it. Now, that in and of itself is a little bit difficult, but if you can do that, it will change your life, because the things that happen to you will no longer be negative, and they will no longer be able to produce in you a negative reaction of fear or anger or jealousy or revenge or any other the multitude of negative attitudes. Another way of looking at this, and this again is why India is the guru of the world, is that this is exactly the subject that was faced in the Mahabharata and in Gita. You know, the field of Kurukshetra is ourself, our own body and our own mind. And the warring factions are our own tendencies. The Kauravas are those tendencies that draw the consciousness down. And the Pandavas are those spiritualized tendencies that draw the consciousness up. And those two are at war. Why at war? Because the materialistic tendencies, which has control over the kingdom, control over our mind, says, I will not yield to the spiritual tendencies, even so much territory as can be covered by a straw. And so if we want to merge back into God, if we want to become spiritualized, we have to carry on a battle. And that battle is internal, and that's what produced the test. To make us stronger, to make us clearer, to make us more expansive. And so, how do we pass the tests? What do we do in order to pass a test? Well, the first thing is that you have to know what the test is going to be about. You know, if you're in school, in, let's say, the 5th grade, and the teacher says, we will have a test on Friday, you'd better study for it. The first thing you want to know, is this a test in mathematics? Is it a test in language? Is it a test in history? What is the test about? And so the first thing that we need to ask when a challenge comes to us is, what is this test about? How am I going to prepare for it? And so, instead of, this is partly why we can't push it away, because when we push it away, we're completely concentrated on exteriorizing it. It doesn't have to do with us. It has to do with somebody else. The way I solve this test is I make everybody else change their behavior. Quite simple. I don't like the way it is at work. I make the boss change his behavior so he's not so mean. I make the co-workers be kind. I make everybody be helpful. This isn't about my behavior. It's about the bad behavior of everyone else. And so my job in this test is to change everybody. A humorist once said, there are many, many people who say they would like to serve God. Most of them want to be in an advisory capacity. And so when we push things out, we want to be in an advisory capacity to our own soul and to God, which has sent us this test. So the first thing we had better ask, and this takes calming ourselves and looking within, what is this challenge about? Why is this happening to me? What is it in me that needs to change? Now, if people simply ask that question, they are already 3/4 of the way to the proper answer. But most people never ask that question. And so, for us to face our challenges and be unshaken in them, we must learn, when things come to us, to ask the question, why is this happening to me? Not, why is this happening to me? Should be somebody else getting this. No, why is this happening to me? What is it in me that this test is meant to change, is meant to educate, is meant to expand? And so if we can get that question to the forefront of our minds, as I said, 3/4 of the job is already done. One time, somebody said to Swamiji, Swamiji, it's so hard to know what to do in this situation. And Swamiji said, no, it isn't. You know what to do. It's just hard to persuade yourself to do it. And isn't that true of most of the things that happen? You know what the higher pathway is. You know what you should do. You know what the right attitude should be. It's hard to get yourself to do it. How many millions of warnings do people need on cigarette packs telling them that cigarettes are likely to kill them? They don't need to know what to do. They know what to do. They have difficulty doing it. And so most of the time, and especially most of the time if we simply ask, what is this test about? Our intuition will tell us what to do, what the test is about. Then the battle becomes persuading ourselves to take the right action, to do the right thing. Maybe it means apologizing to somebody because you weren't right. You're not always right. Devi had a dream in which she was in an argument with another person, and a third person came in and said to her in the dream, you know, Devi, you aren't always right. And she was a little angry when she woke up. She said, at least in my own dream, I should have the right to be always right. But no, we aren't always right. And so one of the things that we need to do is to accept the fact that we may need to change our behavior and we may need to make some adjustments. You know, Swami Kriyananda talks, we've just had a very close friend pass away just 2 days ago. And Swami Kriyananda called death the final exam, because at the time of death, we want to leave this world with no lingering attachments, with no undone business, with nothing that is contracting and shrinking the heart. And so that final exam can be passed by constantly asking what is right. Let me do what is right. One of the ways of doing this, and Yoganandaji said that this was the highest prayer, is to constantly try to align our will with the will of God or the will of your guru, if you have a guru. He said the highest prayer is, I will reason, I will, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path in everything. And that's a high prayer because we still have the sense of separation from God. And so we still have the sense that I'm doing this, I'm acting. But the least we can do is make a conscious attempt to attune our will to the will of God. And so what we want to do then is to find out what the test is about, why it has come to us, and then we want to prepare ourselves for that. Now, how do we prepare ourselves? We prepare ourselves the same way that we prepare for a test in school. We have to study. We have to study right attitudes. We have to study in the sense of discipline. We have to discipline. A student has to have the discipline of concentration and studying the material in front of us. Well, if life is a school, then we have to continually study the question of how do I pass the tests that are going to come to me, because we don't know what the test will be. All we know is that it will be exactly the right test for us. So how do we prepare ourselves for that? One, we become strong, meaning that everything ultimately comes down to mental strength, to the strength of our consciousness. You know, I was talking about the two sides in the Battle of Kurukshetra, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. They actually exist in the subtle spine. So there are tendencies that try to draw our energy flow down in a downward direction to the base of the spine, and down and out into worldly tendencies of anger and jealousy and revenge and greed and lust and all of those different Kauravas. And then there are tendencies that try to draw our energy up toward peace and calmness and love and joy. And the Pandavas actually represent the different chakras in the subtle spine. And so they're trying to draw the energy in and up. So all of life, one could say, is a series of daily battles on the battle of Kurukshetra. Will our energy rise or will it fall? Will we train ourselves? How will we align our will? Guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path in everything. How do we train? How do we move the will so that it goes in the upward direction? And there are things that we can do even on a physical plane which will help that. You were all, as you came in, we did these exercises. Probably some of you thought, oh, this is kind of silly. This is kind of a quaint thing to do. But you know what those exercises did? They began to move the energy in an upward direction. And you know what the result of that physiologically is? Your brain chemistry changed. Your hormonal balance changed. And if you were to have to do something like take a test or take an interview for a job application, if you would do those exercises for 2 or 3 minutes before you do the test, you will have, and this is a study that was done on a slightly different way, but on the same premise, you will have a 70% greater chance of getting a job offer than somebody who's all shrunken in on themselves and looking at their cell phone and thinking, oh, it's going to be terrible. I don't think I'll be able to pass. They said 2 minutes standing in the Wonder Woman position is what they called it. Stand for 2 minutes in the Wonder Woman position and it will change your brain chemistry. Well, if it can do that in 2 minutes, and you learn some of these simple things, what will happen over the course of a lifetime? Well, I'll tell you what will happen over the course of a lifetime because we've seen it in a community full of people practicing yoga, practicing meditation, practicing affirmations, practicing energization exercises. What happens is that it changes not only the mentality, but the physical body. We have a clinic that serves about 6,000 or 7,000 people in the same area as our community. Our community is about 250 or 300 people. So the test case, we're the test, and this is the control group, the other 5,000 or 6,000 people. You know what the result of practicing these kinds of attitudes and energization exercises, eating right, meditating? We physiologically, members of Ananda, test out to be 10 years younger than their chronological age, as compared to a sample group, a control group of people living in a normal way, but living in the same environment and the same place, 10 years younger. You know what else happens? And this is beginning to now come up in scientific studies. It changes your DNA. And you pass on these traits to your children. If you meditate, if you think positively, if you exercise, if you change your behavior patterns. We used to think that the DNA was like a floor plan for a building, and that floor plan could not change. And so the building had to be constructed exactly as that floor plan. But now we're understanding, science is understanding that that's not true. DNA is like a very complicated recipe. And yes, you may not be able to change the recipe, but you don't have to add every ingredient in that recipe. So genetically, according to your lifestyle, according to your behavior, some genes are turned on and some are turned off. Some brain areas become activated and some become less active. Yogis, meditators, the forefront, the prefrontal lobes of the brain become larger and become more active. And the kind of areas in the stem cell part, a stem brain, the primitive brain, the limbic system, that becomes less reactive. And so this is the seat of higher consciousness, of discrimination, of the ability to do things that we know are the right things to do. And that becomes more active. The brain grows and there are more cells there. Yogis, when they meditate, they see light at this point at the forehead. And seeing light at that point, they try to merge their consciousness into that. And Yoganandaji said, and this was 100 years ago when he was talking this way, he said that looking into that light will change the very cells of your brain. At that time, science thought he was a little crazy or just talking metaphorically. Now science knows that that's true. Now we have the tests. So meditation and concentration, right attitude will change your brain, will change your physiology, will make you live longer, will allow you to live in a healthier way, and will ultimately be passed into your DNA and passed to your children. Now that says to me that that's a pretty good solution to some of life's challenges. So one of the ways that we are able to face life's challenges and stand unshaken is to make ourselves strong and flexible and to look within for what we need to change. And then, as I said, and we have lived through it, not just that one time with the fire, but over and over again, we have lived through tests and challenges that we look back and we think, even when we're going through them sometimes, we think, oh, this will make a good story, because it's entertaining. And when you're centered in yourself, when you're strong in yourself, when the energy flow is positive and not negative, then you can stand amidst anything that life is going to throw at you, and you will come out a victor.
Well, I'd also like to share a bit with you. First, I want to thank you all for joining us on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And it is such a joy to share the teachings of our great Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, as we have been taught by Swami Kriyananda, one of his great direct disciples. And I want to start by telling a story that, in fact, Swamiji told us. In this story, there was a king, and he had a minister, one of his advisors, who was very close to him. And this man was eternally optimistic. Whatever happened in life, he would say, this is for the best. This is for the best. And the king very much valued this advisor. And the other ministers were a little bit jealous of him, and they're looking for a way they might undermine him and get to be the first in the king's favor. One day, the king and his trusted advisor and some attendants went out on a hunting expedition. And they had their chariots and their bows and arrows. But such as it was the fate that day, when the king pulled the bow and to shoot the arrow from his bow, pulled the string, his finger got caught in the string and his finger was severed. And he just felt this was a terrible tragedy. And when they returned from the hunt, this advisor who was with him said, yes, the king has lost his finger, but everything that happens is for the best. And the other advisors thought, the king won't like to hear this. So they told the king what this man had said. And indeed, the king became angry. And he said, how can he betray me like this? Throw him in the dungeon. And so this advisor, which there's a second message in this, better not to be advisors of kings. Very whimsical, or perhaps high political officials. So this man was languishing in prison, and then some time passed and the king healed, and again he went out hunting. But this time again, he had a mishap, but this time he was captured by a tribe of very primitive people who performed human sacrifice to propitiate their gods. And so they were about to sacrifice the king, and then they looked and they noticed that he had a finger missing. And they said amongst themselves, we can't offer an imperfect body to our God. Let him go, release him. And so the king made his way back to the kingdom, and he said, you know, my advisor was right. If I hadn't lost that finger, I would have been killed. And he called to the guards, release my trusted advisor. And they brought him back. And he was, again, eternally optimistic, no matter what challenges presented themselves. And the king said, you were right. It was a good thing that happened. But look at you. Because of my judgment, you've spent months languishing in prison. And how can you say that that's the best possible thing that could have happened? And the advisor said, "Ah, my lord, you see, I have always been at your side. If I hadn't been in prison, I would have also been captured by those tribal people, and I have 10 fingers." And so this is a way, drives home the first point that I would like to make in how to stand amidst life's challenges. First, we must learn to live in longer rhythms. For those of us who have experienced even a little bit of life, you know very often the things that seem to be the worst at first turn out to be, just as this advisor said, blessings in disguise. And the things that we think, oh, this is wonderful, I'm so glad this happened, isn't it true that very often those in the end turned out to be not such auspicious events? And so if we can learn just to live in longer rhythms in life. Swami Kriyanandaji, our beloved teacher, as Sagar said, he passed away in 2013, but he is very, very much with us still, inspiring us and guiding us and making his presence felt in many different ways. But he used to, when he would go to the dentist, he wouldn't take Novocaine because he didn't like the way it made him feel kind of numb and dull. And so one time, he actually broke a tooth, one of his front teeth, and the nerve was kind of dangling, and they took him to the dentist, and he said, "Please, sir, don't give me Novocaine." And the dentist said, "This is going to be very, very painful." And he said, "It's all right. I have lived a good life, a long life. I've known much happiness and fulfillment. This work you have to do, it's just a little moment in the entirety of my life. I will be fine." And in fact, he was. So whenever difficulty comes to you, as I say, live in a longer rhythm. It may be difficult in the moment, but as we know, life is a series of ups and downs. Wait till the next crest comes. And another thing that's very, very important in learning how to face life's challenges is to try to find positive solutions, no matter what comes. And as Jyotish was speaking, we have different parts of our brain. We have the superconscious, Master taught us. We have the subconscious mind. This is the repository of all of our past memories, not only from this life, but all life's experiences, all the incarnations. Incredible database, one can imagine. And then there's the conscious mind. This is the mind that we ordinarily live in. This is the rational decision-making process. If something happens, we think, oh dear, what am I going to do now? And we try to work our way out of it with our brain. But there's another part of our mind, our consciousness, I should say, and that is the super consciousness, as our guru said. For those of you who came earlier, Sagar led us in some exercises which Swami Kriyananda created called the Superconscious living exercises. And they're to try to get us to that, to raise the energy. But the superconsciousness is awakened through meditation. And it's this part of our brain that is intuitive, creative, can look at life and see many, many possibilities. Whatever adverse circumstances come, there is a solution. And Yoganandaji taught us, you will never be given a test in life that you do not have the strength to deal with. That thought has given me great comfort over the years. No matter what happened, I pause and I think, I have the ability to deal with this, however devastating it may seem. And as Jyotish was saying earlier, it has come to me for a reason. Let me exert my strength. let me try to find a superconscious solution. And in the history of Ananda community, we have had many challenges, and the solutions are not always what you would think. Very often and this is a little secret I offer you about the superconscious mind. The conscious mind is very sure of itself. This is what we must do. The superconscious mind is that part of our being which is tuned into a greater awareness, to a part of all being, all consciousness. And so the guidance of the superconscious mind is often very subtle, very quiet, and we will not hear it if we don't still ourselves within. Swamiji has said, he had one of our dear Gurubhais at the Ananda community was an older woman, and she was a woman of few words. But he said she would always get a certain very quiet tone in her voice, and if we would be trying to figure out how to overcome a challenge, she would very quietly say, Swamiji, maybe we could do this. And he said whenever she would have that tone of voice, he knew that that was superconscious guidance. So if you are wanting to find solutions to the problems that face you, go within, as we've been saying, meditate, raise the awareness to the spiritual eye, and then intuitively ask, guide me, project your thought. I've co-edited a book, I believe we'll probably have it for sale, How to Know and Trust Your Inner Guidance, Intuition for Starters. And this is a wonderful skill we can develop, developing our intuitive perception so that we can draw solutions. We're not overwhelmed by the endless questions that plague us in life, but we know how to draw the guidance. And the way Swamiji explains how to develop this facility, if you have a problem, if you have a question, concentrate deeply at the spiritual eye, project that thought, and then sit quietly and feel the response in the heart chakra, the Anahat chakra. This is the Master told us that we are like radio receiving and sending stations. We project our thoughts from the spiritual eye, we receive them in the heart. And when you feel, as Yoganandaji called, the whispers from eternity, beautiful phrase, we feel that divine response in our heart, then we know what to do. Even though it might not be the easiest thing to do, we know it's the right thing to do. Now, another important point, if we want to stand amidst life's challenges, is to learn how to act rather than merely react. And what's the difference here? Reaction is something comes to us, a difficulty, a challenge, illness, loss of a loved one, and we immediately get outside our center and we begin thinking and feeling, but we have lost our ability to be objective. Action, true action, is to be able to look at circumstances, center your consciousness within, and decide from within yourself what is the best course of action. And this is just the drama that we saw in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Here we have the Kauravas and the Pandavas about to enter into battle on either side of this plain of Kurukshetra. And the Pandavas, the forces of spiritual consciousness, they blow their conchas and beat their drums to affirm, to assert higher consciousness. And in response, the Kauravas blow their conchas and their horns and beat their drums. And Arjuna, the great warrior, the great disciple, the model for right action, he stands and he becomes discouraged. He reacts. And his energy begins falling. And he says, he has the dialogue in that very subtle first chapter of the Gita. And he said, how can I kill these people? They are my relatives, my uncles, my mentors, my cousins, my grandsires. And he said, what good would come of that? This is the reactive mode. This is not coming from centeredness in himself. And it says, he slumps down in the chariot and drops his bow, unstrings his bow. And our Guruji explained the symbolism of that. It's about the devotee in meditation who is sitting upright with the energy focused at the spiritual eye. The bow represents the spine, the danda of the yogi. And he's standing there, and he lets it drop, and he becomes discouraged. And then in English, the next chapter, of course, is Krishna's consolation. And what does he tell him? You must act, not just react to the challenge before you. And he said it is the duty, you know, the Gita, probably far better than I, but he says, you must be centered in yourself, and by fulfilling your duty as a kshatriya, you will achieve liberation, you will achieve freedom, whatever the outcome. And that's an important point too. When we are faced with challenges, not to react, but to find centeredness in yourself, to find the superconscious solution, and then with clarity, strength, uplifted consciousness, to make a decisive action and follow it. Once, Swami Kriyananda was faced with a big financial crisis in the early days of building Ananda community in California. And really, this great soul, who we had the remarkable good karma to have as our teacher for almost 46 years. He was a man of such action. You know, even his name, Kriyananda, means joy through the practice of Kriya and also joy through action. He didn't react, he acted. So at this point, we were purchasing a piece of property to build the Ananda Community Ashram. And we were short of money, and they were going to foreclose on it. And he didn't know what to do. And someone called up, and they said, oh, come over to my friend. Come to my house and have tea, and then you'll feel better. And he was a warrior, and he said, I don't care how I feel. I need to know what to do, what action to take. And this is the difference between reaction and action. Reaction, the energy focuses in, how is this affecting me? How do I feel? Action is, how do I move forward with clarity? And he got on the phone and he began calling. This was still in the days of dial phones. That's why some of you maybe have never done that. But he began calling everyone he knew who could possibly help him. And by the end of that evening, he had the money he needed, so they didn't take the property away. But this is the difference between acting and reacting. And watch that in yourself. Again, as we've been saying, every test that comes to you is to teach you something about yourself. And why do we need to learn things about ourselves? Why do we need to be taught? Because we aren't yet awakened to our true potential. And step by step, God brings us the tests to open the next door. And I don't want to scare you, but the challenges don't get less, they get more. But you have the greater strength to deal with them. And so it doesn't seem like they get harder. Master said, a wrestler does not get stronger by wrestling people weaker than himself. He gets stronger by wrestling someone stronger than himself. And that's why the tests come. And it's just a thrilling experience to watch this. Now, another thing to overcome tests and challenges, Master said, environment is stronger than willpower. one of his basic teachings. What does this mean? We can have all the best intentions in life. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a dharmic person. I'm going to be righteous. I'm not going to yell at my family anymore. I'm not going to slap my son anymore, whatever it may be. But then we get around people that are emotional, reactive, and our resolve fades. But the good news is if we are around people that are strong, that are clear-minded, that also affects us. And I have seen this so often in my life in spiritual communities. I remember Jyotish was describing the forest fire that we sustained in 1976. And when he came up to me and said, we don't have to worry about leaks anymore. Well, I want you to get a visual image of what that scene was like. Beautiful 700 acres, forested, woodlands, gardens, flowers, 25 beautiful homes, dairy, lovely buildings, all reduced to ashes. Ashes, that was what was left. So it wasn't just like, oh, look, there was a fire in the kitchen. There was nothing left. And at the same time, there were the way they fight fires in California is they send these big airplanes and they drop fire retardant on the fire suppressant. And it's this bright pink powder. And so we're standing there, and these big airplanes, they were old World War II bomber planes, actually, and they were dropping this pink chemical down on trying to stop the fire, unfortunately not successfully. But it was really like being in a war, being in a city that was besieged. And so it wasn't just like, oh, well, I guess we'll just go home and make dinner. There was no home, there was no dinner. But Jyotish had his wonderful line, which really I will treasure within my soul forever, when he said we don't have to worry about leaks. But then I was trying to be very strong, even though I must admit I wasn't. And I looked around at the total devastation, and I said, well, where are we going to build the next community? And Jyotish looked at me with calmness and centeredness in his eyes, which I must share with you, he always has, the fruit of a lifetime of meditation. And he looked at me with very calm eyes and a little bit puzzled. So I asked him, where will we build the next community? And he said, what do you mean? We'll build it right here. And I looked at the ashes and the burning stumps and the orange chemical everywhere, and I thought to myself, how in the world will we be able to rebuild a community here? But his solution consciousness lifted me up, and I thought, oh, all right, that's what we'll do. And certainly that's what happened. And for those of you, we invite you, if you are able, if I know many people have family and friends in California, if you come, please come visit us. It's really, you will see some footage that is a part of the movie trailer we'll be showing later. It's really one of the most beautiful places on earth. And like the phoenix, it rose from the ashes. So life's challenges are to show us, no matter what gets taken away, you can stand there, you can go forward, you can rebuild a better life, no matter what has been loss you have sustained. And then finally, to be able to stand with courage and strength, we need to develop an inner life. We need to have a reality, to experience that reality that isn't touched by the changing circumstances of life. And we need to see everything that comes from the hand of God. At the time of the fire, Swamiji, when he first saw me, and I was a little shaky at that day, and he trying to again raise my energy up, he looked at me and he said, "How are you, Devi?" "Well, that's good." I couldn't even reply. He just answered the question for me, and it was the best thing he could have done. But then some weeks later, he wrote a little note, and such a beautiful balance in the note of compassion and wisdom, which was very characteristic of him. And he said, I'm very sorry for the loss you all have sustained, but always remember, what God gives, we take. And not with submission, not with resignation, not with self-pity, but understanding that what God gives is part of his lesson plan for us to bring us closer to freedom. There's a beautiful story from the life of one of India's great saints, Swami Ram Das. And he tells this story in his beautiful book, In the Vision of God. And Ram Das was a wandering sadhu, just wandering around the countryside. He owned nothing, just had a chadar and a loincloth and a little begging bowl and a staff. That's all he had. And he would just wander chanting Ram's name, all over the countryside. And one evening he found shelter in a little hut. And the rain was out, it was storming, it was pouring outside. And all of a sudden the door of the hut was thrown open, and this crazy man came in with wild hair and wild eyes. And the crazy man looked at Ram Das and he said, "Give me your chadar." And Ram Das very freely gave him his chadar. He said, "Give me your danda." And Ram Das very happily handed that to him. And he said, looking, there was nothing left now but the begging bowl. He said, "Give me your begging bowl." Again, Ram Das lovingly gave it to him. And the man left. And then in the morning, Ram Das's disciples came and found him still chanting Ram Nam. And they said, "Master, what happened? You've lost your chadar and your begging bowl?" And he said, "Oh, yes. A man came last night, and he took those things." And the disciples said, "We will go after this man, and we will get them back." And Ram Das looked at him, and he said, "What kind of madness is this?" He said, "Here I pray night and day to Ram to take everything, that I want to give him everything. And then Ram comes to me in the middle of the night and asks for a few things, and you want to go and beat him up and take those things back? That was Ram who came and took those things." And if we see life this way, if we see that every loss, seeming loss, is God's way of just opening our awareness. When the fire came, we had a nice little house for our new son, and, you know, everything you do to fix up for a new family. It was all gone. We had nothing, just the clothes on our back. And yet I understood in that moment that if I didn't have a sense of comfort, of security, of home in my own heart, a beautiful house would not give that to me. I'm sure we all have been in the homes of very wealthy people where there is no sense of comfort, there is no sense of nourishment. And I just thought, even if my child grows up under a tree, we can still give him a home, because that comes from our own heart. It comes from our understanding that the security is only an expression of our faith in God, of our trust in God, and of our love for God. And so to have an inner life, for those of you who perhaps are new to our teachings, we urge you, learn to meditate. It says again in that great, great scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. What Krishna is referring to, inward religion, is meditation. Exactly, not any outward rituals, inward religion. Dire fears, you will be saved, and colossal suffering. This isn't just poetic, this is the truth. Because your life may not be any easier or perhaps even harder than the next person. But with the ability, everything we've been talking about, you will find that whatever faces you, you're able to deal with it with equanimity and centeredness and even a sense of joy. And, you know, our tests are given to us because of our own past karma. We are born into this world as pure reflections of God, but we are also given free will. And in that gift of free will, we make choices. And some of those choices bring us suffering. Some bring us joy and inner freedom. But until we balance every action, we will be continuing to get the tests until our karma is balanced perfectly and we stand like the great ones who are without karma. And so every test that comes, I like to think one step closer to freedom, one more bit of karma worked out. And if we can see it that way, it's very helpful. But we also need to understand we are part of a greater reality. We are a part of all humanity. So yes, we have individual karma, but we also have group karma, national karma, global karma. And we have to be a part, as Swamiji has said, we don't want, if you're not a part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. We need to be part of the solution of the world that we live in now, which is fraught with violence and divisiveness and hatred and all of these negative qualities. And these impact us, and they impact everyone. But by the practice of meditation, by all the things that we're talking about, you will be able not only to change your consciousness and change your ability to deal with challenges, but you will be a source of strength to others, and you will be able to help guide them through difficulties. There was a story, and this will be the last story, and then I want to guide us all in a guided prayer for world peace that Yoganandaji gave us. But there was a true story from World War II when the Allied troops, the American soldiers, were entering into Germany, and they found what they didn't know existed, these terrible concentration camps where people, you know, I don't need to go into detail, but torture and deprivation and cruelty and all of these things. But there was one man there, and the American soldiers called him Wild Bill, even though he was German, because he had this big handlebar mustache. And he was a German, but he spoke English. And so they would use him as a translator. And everyone else in the camp was either in the last stages of dying, starvation, illness, deprivation. But this one man, Bill, seemed to be very strong and positive and helpful. And finally, the soldiers were puzzled why he was that way and everyone else was essentially dying. And they said, "Did you come to this camp very, very late in the war, so these other people were here long before you?" And he said, "Oh no, I was one of the first ones here. But when I came, I made it my mission, no matter what they did to me, to think about helping others, to think about the care of others, to bring them what I could. If they were ill, to see if I could find medicine." And there he stood at the end of the war, still filled with strength and still filled with light, because he had not succumbed to the incredible challenge that those souls face. And so ultimately, the more we can see consciously that we can be a part of a positive revolution in the world today, and not just think, oh, this happened to me, and this is so hard, and I lost this, and now I'm ill. All that may be so, but you know, there's the statement, I cried because I had no shoes until I saw a man who had no feet. And so there is a greater need than yours. And see if you can look out into the world. If you want to find the strength to deal with your own tests, help someone in greater need than yourself. And in doing that, you find the ability to conquer. And then you become, whatever happens, you can smile at that. So now I would like to end with a prayer that we will do together. And the choir is going to assemble. Thank you. So if you see people moving, they're coming because they're going to sing a song. This is a prayer, and I'll explain it first, that Yogananda taught to how we can be channels for helping others to be strong and how we can help change the vibration of the world. The prayer is simply this. We'll repeat it together in a moment. We say, Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And we do this 10 times. And then we pause, and visualizing ourselves surrounded in light, we repeat, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And we repeat this 3 times. So now I'm going to invite you to do this with me. I ask you all to sit up, put down anything you may be holding, and sit down, I'm sorry. Sit down. Did I say stand up? Sorry, wrong cue. Sit down, put down anything you're holding. Let's do a few rounds of regular breathing. So let's inhale to the count of 10. Hold, and then exhale. Again, inhale, hold, exhale. Once more, inhale. Now tense the whole body and throw the breath out. Now bring your awareness to the point between the eyebrows and concentrate there. And let's visualize the world surrounded in light, this beautiful blue planet that we live on, our common home. All of us, children under the one Father, Mother, God. And see this world filled everywhere with peace, with brotherhood, with understanding, where people set aside their differences and the scales fall from their eyes and they see that their enemy is their brother. And now let's affirm together in unison. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. You say it with me. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Now pause for a moment. Feel yourself surrounded, resting in the peace and harmony and divine love that God wants to bestow on each one of us. And please repeat with me. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony.